103.8.
In association with Do Business Rewards. Up to 15% rewards on your monthly spend.
It's now 11 minutes before 8 on the Business Breakfast, and we're very pleased to welcome back to the Business Breakfast studio Christopher Fix, the CEO of the Dubai Mercantile Exchange, the DME. Very good morning to you, Christopher. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to come, especially because it's across the street and it's such an easy commute.
So,
What, you wouldn't come otherwise?
If you lived in Mid, if you wouldn't come.
Oh, of course I would.
Let's have a look at some things. We'll talk in a moment about the International Energy Agency's outlook for 2013 issued yesterday in London. But let's first of all talk about the exchange, because your main contract is the Oman crude contract. And every day we sit here, we talk about WTI, we talk about Brent, but we don't talk about Oman crude. And the contract, when it was first launched, struggled to get traction. It's trading very well now, but has it had the impact on the wider region and on the global stage that the DME would have hoped?
Well, of course, we're building towards that. I'd say that we're firmly established right now. We've hit a number of milestones, including we had a record day last month of over 13 million barrels in a day. We've got more people trading the exchange than ever, at over 65. Last year, we averaged around 50. We've had many new members join, like Mitsubishi and Royal Bank of Scotland this year. And we're 35% up on daily volume, and we've already hit our yearly target before the month even started, and we still have 2 months to go in terms of, we matched last year's a number in terms of barrels traded. So it's going very strongly our way. Of course, more is always the answer. You want to be globally more relevant. And that's really picking up steam now.
Well, just talk about that word used there, relevant. And what is the relevance of Oman crude vis-a-vis Brent and West Texas and any other sort of crude out there?
Simply put, it's sour crude. The Middle East produces sour crude. Those two other benchmarks you're talking about are light, sweet crudes. It's a big difference if you're running a refinery and you're going to actually put sour crude into it. You want to have an input through your cycle that actually matches your exposures, and DME represents that. So the 17 million barrels that are going through the Straits of Hormuz, a few miles away from here, are much more chemically similar to DME Oman than they are to WTI or Brent. And there's no Brent or WTI coming into Asia, period. There's very, very little of it, whereas our crude is the underlying marker that's driving the economic growth that we're going to talk about.
So is most of your trading from the Far East?
Well, we've got a nice split right now, but clearly our physical is going east. So when you look at the production of Oman, it's about 30 million barrels. We're delivering about half of it through the exchange, and the vast majority is going to China. But the trading is picking up really out of London now. London's very interested in the story we're representing.
And how much is one barrel of Oman crude today?
About 104.
So it's roughly in the sort of middle of the pricing of the others, yeah?
That's right. It runs a little bit of a discount to Brent.
Let's talk about the wider picture now, because we've been covering a lot on energy this week. There's been the nuclear conference, unconventional gas, which kind of gave us a little bit of a titter earlier on in the week. But, it's all pretty serious, because global energy demand, according to the latest World Energy Outlook report, is set to grow, as you would imagine, to 2035 by about a third. So you're going to need that cocktail of fuel to effectively power forward the world's demand for energy. How do you see that growing within the region? Obviously, fossil fuel has a big part to play in that. But in terms of trying to get the gas reserves out of the ground with new technology as well, how big a piece is the Middle East going to get of that particular jigsaw?
Well, the Middle East is growing probably more rapidly than most other parts of the world, and I think this is clear for us who live here. Try to get your kid into school or rent a house. The prices are going crazy, and there's a lot of factors behind that, and I'm sure that our listeners are pretty much aware of it. But the fact is that the Middle East is growing also as a consumption area. This is a dynamic that's changing, because everyone's always looked at us as a place to roll up your super tanker and fill it up and then take it to other parts of the world. But right now, with the number of cars, the number of schools, the number of roads, the infrastructure builds, the airports, we're looking at a tremendous growth rate. In some countries, the fastest in the world. Qatar is growing at one of the fastest rates on the planet.
Is that going to offset, because obviously there's been a lot made of the US shale gas revolution and the fact that they could become self-sufficient, and a big concern that that drop-off could impact the region? Or is it just the case that the slack or the demand is so great that the slack will be taken up elsewhere, so demand from India, demand from China?
I think there's a real problem in the Middle East right now, and that's demand security, because the U.S. is now reducing as a demand center for crude from the Middle East because of the production, the shale. You know that story. But right now, there's not going to be enough buyers for the barrels in the Middle East. I think it's a real problem. If Iran comes back online, if Iraq starts to hit 9, 10, 12 million barrels a day, you're going to have a situation where governments in the region who rely exclusively or mostly for oil revenues to fund their budgets are going to have difficulties placing these barrels. If they can't sell them, they're going to have a real problem meeting their targets.
What does that mean for the DME then in terms of price and number of contracts?
For the DME, it means that our crude is even more valuable because you can go out 5, 6, 7 months, a year ahead and buy it on the exchange and know you're going to get it delivered. You don't have to worry. You're going to know what the price is and you're going to have a reliable delivery mechanism. The Omanis never have a problem placing their barrels. They never have an issue with demand security because the customers can come hedge those prices way ahead down the curve. The other producers who don't use a pricing mechanism like the DME are going to be up against it because they're not as competitive.
I kind of assumed that Oman crude was a generic title. Is it all absolutely 100% pure crude oil from Oman itself?
It is, and what it is a mixture of the fields that they have there. So they have the advantage of being able to blend it and deliver a month-on-month even product that you know the API gravity, you know the sulfur content. And if you're running a multi-zillion-dollar refinery, you want to make sure what you're putting into it is very strictly controlled, and Oman does that.
I've just got a nice text coming in, and they're asking, will the DME look at green sectors such as bioethanol, biodiesel for cars and trucks? That's coming from Steve. Is there room for that kind of thing on your index as well? Is that something that's in the plans?
It's not in the immediate plans, but we would look at anything that represents Middle Eastern to Asia trade flows. So if, for example, that starts to become something that is produced in the region and our customers are looking to buy it and we can offset it against the underlying oil, we'd be interested, but not in the immediate plans.
What else does the DME trade?
We're only trading the Oman crude contract.
Just that.
And there's tremendous demand because of those dynamics we discussed before about the sour crude play, and we're going to keep riding that.
But if you say that there are some demand issues rather than supply issues, I mean, you are limited to just Oman crude, I mean, nothing else. So you're limited to a certain percentage of their output.
Well, right now we're already delivering more crude than Brent has. You know, our output's 1 million barrels a day, but we've got 30 million barrels a month. Through the DME, we're doing something like 25 to 30 cargoes. Brent sometimes has 15. We've got a very strong physical base, but clearly what we're going to do is keep developing our market and talk to the other producers in the region, because we think that our value proposition applies to them as well, and that eventually we'll get more of the producers to use our mechanism.
Where is the delivery point for your oil?
It's at Min Al Fahal, which is in Muscat in Oman.
Christopher, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really fascinating to talk about that and, of course, this World Energy Outlook report and the Middle East role within that. We look forward to seeing you once again. But thanks for joining us. Christopher Fick, CEO of the DME.
Very welcome.
This is the Business Breakfast with Malcolm Taylor and Sarah Cocker on Dubai Eye 103.8.
In association with Al Rastamani International Exchange.
Win back double the money you send. Also, scratch and win exercises.
It's 7:58.
This is the Business